The Epstein story was never about one wealthy predator. It was about a system that allowed exploitation, minimized pain, delayed justice, and protected the reputations of powerful men.
Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored, but I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken.
Never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island.
Welcome to Headline to Heartline, where a few lines of text can sometimes bring light into a story that has lived in the shadows for far too long. And this week, with the release of yet another small handful of Epstein-related emails, it feels as if we're opening one more dusty box inside a labyrinth that still holds thousands of sealed files. A tiny fraction released, a mountain still hidden behind legal walls and political hesitation. And once again, the weight of that secrecy falls, unfairly and painfully, on the same woman whose story should have been heard with clarity from the very beginning, Virginia Giuffre. If you follow this channel, you already know her voice, her courage, and her relentless fight for truth are the spine of everything we discuss here. She was a teenager. She had no power. She had no voice, and she was surrounded by adults who treated her suffering like an administrative difficulty, something to manage quietly, something to make disappear rather than something to urgently stop. It is one of the deepest injuries of this entire case. How many adults saw, suspected, or benefited from the harm that was being done, and chose comfort over conscience? And decades later, the pace of truth is still painfully slow. After her death this year, the cost of telling the truth feels even heavier. It feels as if the world continues to move at a comfortable distance from the harm she lived with every single day, as if everyone can examine this story at arm's length, while she had to carry it in her body. So let me walk you through what was released this week, what matters, what shifts, what cracks open, and why these small pieces of information still manage to shake parts of the Epstein narrative that powerful people have spent years trying to seal over with polished denials, practiced interviews, and curated public relations. You might be asking yourself, what exactly is in these new emails? What do they clarify? Who do they expose? And why does it always feel like survivors are the last voices heard, even after everything we now know? So here's the recap, clean, simple, and focused. Earlier this week, members of the House Oversight Committee, both Democrats and Republicans, released a narrow batch of emails from Epstein's estate. Small in number, but loud in impact. They reignited questions about how previous administrations handled Epstein's case, including decisions made within the Trump administration. Some of the emails referenced Trump by name only because he knew Epstein and Maxwell socially, just as many powerful men did in that era. And then there was the line, the one that hit the public like a stone dropped into still water, describing Trump as knowing about the girls. When reporters asked Trump about the emails on Friday night, he had one answer. He knows nothing about them. Nothing at all, as if these messages floated in from a universe he never touched, never walked through, never brushed up against.
Mr. President, what did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really, what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, who you know, who that is, Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with.
And there is something almost familiar about that kind of denial. Firm, absolute, airtight. The kind of denial that feels less like truth and more like strategy. A full stop, not a doorway. A shield raised before the first question can even be asked. I know nothing. A freeze meant to close the book before anyone flips the page. But let me be very clear. This channel does not exist to turn this into a partisan boxing match. Trump appears in the emails because Maxwell was in his orbit, just as she was in Andrew's. The men who enabled Epstein, protected him, or looked the other way were spread across political lines, business networks, and social circles. This is not a red-blue story. It's a power story, a silent story, a complicity story. Which brings us back to Andrew. Because buried inside this week's release is something that goes far beyond politics, a small but damning confirmation that touches directly on Virginia's truth. One email from Epstein himself acknowledges that the famous photo of Andrew with Virginia was real, not doctored, not manipulated, real. He even writes about taking photos of her, something Virginia had described in her memoir long before any of these emails became public. This matters. It matters because for years Andrew insisted the picture was fake. He insisted he didn't remember the night, didn't remember meeting her, didn't remember anything that tied him to her story. And Sarah Ferguson defended him fiercely, calling him loyal, honorable, misunderstood. And perhaps she wanted to believe that. Belief can be a warm place to rest when the truth is cold. But belief can also be a form of self-protection, a way of avoiding looking into the parts of the story that rearrange everything. And these emails, simple lines of text, dates, names, don't give us the full story. They don't replace the thousands of documents still sealed. They don't undo the years Virginia spent fighting alone. But they do something quiet and devastating. They confirm that Andrew's denials weren't misunderstandings. They weren't confusion. They weren't poor memory. They were choices. Deliberate choices. Calculated choices. Choices designed to protect reputation over reality. And that brings us back to the young woman at the center of all of this. In her memoir, Virginia described working at Trump's spa as a teenager, the textured details, the atmosphere, the odd mix of luxury and neglect. She never accused Trump of harming her, and that silence has puzzled many people. Was she afraid of retaliation? Was she exhausted by the weight of battling institutions that seemed endless? Or did she simply know that naming certain men would unleash storms no survivor is ever prepared for? We will never know for sure, but the question sits heavy. Because the Epstein story was never about one wealthy predator. It was about a system that allowed exploitation, minimized pain, delayed justice, and protected the reputations of powerful men. A system where denials were polished, practiced, and performed. Trump calling the emails a hoax, Andrew denying the photograph, Sarah trying to rehabilitate him publicly, institutions delaying, redacting, withholding, families guarding image with more energy than they ever used to protect vulnerable girls. And here we are, once again, watching the truth crawl forward at a pace that feels intentionally slow, a pace that favors men with lawyers, estates, and lifelong insulation, a pace that forgets how young these girls were and how much they lost and how long Virginia carried the weight alone. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. It isn't about royalists or critics. It is about one universal truth. A civilized society cannot be comfortable with human trafficking, especially trafficking of minors, being buried under bureaucracy, silence, and strategic denials. And as more emails surface, even tiny ones, the message grows louder. The people who denied, minimized, or lied are being pushed inch by inch towards accountability. Slowly, far too slowly, but visibly. If you believe these truths deserve to be heard, please like the video and subscribe. It truly makes a difference. Thank you for being here, for caring about Virginia, for caring about the truth, and for refusing to let her story fade into silence.